President, there is no xenophobia in South Africa. It's a few groups of thugs who think they can run our country and make Africa divided. We do not subscribe to xenophobia. We will never hate Botswana because we are married to each other. Together. When you hate Botswana, that is because you are hating yourself. Everyone who has engaged in xenophobic attacks in South Africa suffers from self-hate. Do not generalize all of us. We want African unity. We want the unity of SADC. We want to share in the land of Africa because we are collectively exploited. There is no one who can say these ones were better off and we were exploited. Everywhere where an African child is found, that African child is hated. Black people are hated everywhere. We cannot afford to hate them here in Africa.
Yes, South Africans are not xenophobia. South Africans are good people. It's only a small group of people who are sponsored and paid to hate fellow Africans. Ladies and gentlemen, dear lovely family, brothers and sisters, those are words of Julius Malema speaking from Gaborone, Botswana, where he was invited to the BNF conference in Botswana in front of President Duma Gideon Boko of Botswana. My dear lovely family, brothers and sisters, I would like to focus on the issue of xenophobia. There are three things that Africans, especially South Africans, they need to know about xenophobia. Three things we need to understand about xenophobia, and we need to pay attention on this issue. Xenophobia is being sponsored purposely to shift the minds of Black majority in South Africa instead of focusing on the root causes of their challenges to look somewhere else. Number two is to make sure that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and Africa Agenda 2063 is not going to be achieved. That is agenda number 2 of xenophobia. And agenda number 3, this is the most hidden agenda that, of course, we don't see it, is for white South Africans to have their own country. The agenda of xenophobia is for white South Africans to create their own country. You may ask me how. Let me start with this agenda. Agenda number 3. We'll come to agenda number 2 and agenda number 1. Agenda number 3 of xenophobia is to make sure that white South Africans, they are going to create their own country. To create their own country because, first of all, they want to create the image of South Africa, that the people of South Africa, Black South Africans, are killers, are people who are killing fellow Africans, people who are killing other people. You remember Donald Trump said there was a white genocide in South Africa. You remember? And that statement never changed. When you ask Trump about South Africa, Trump is saying there is white genocide in South Africa. Farmers are being killed in South Africa. And now, after white being killed, according to Trump and the Western world, now it's about Black or Africans also are being attacked. You see, in this side, whites are attacked. Now, xenophobia, Black are attacked. What does that mean? It means South Africans, Black South Africans, they don't want anyone. They're killing whites, at the same time they're killing Blacks. Blacks are also moving away. You have seen Blacks or Africans being repatriated. Nigerians have moved away, Ghanaians have moved away, Ugandans have moved away, Congolese, some of them have moved away, returned to their home countries, Malawians have returned to their home countries. But if you heard one one time that white South Africans are returning to Europe. I want to ask you, have you heard that there's white South Africans who are being repatriated to Europe because there's white genocide? Why they're staying in South Africa? Do you know? But black people, Nigerians have returned home, Ghanaians have returned home, Malawians, Mozambicans, and Zimbabweans have returned home. But whites are remaining in South Africa. At the end of the day, after black being, all of them being taken out, it will be black South Africans against white people. And that's where the point is. So the world will say, there is white genocide. We need to protect this small group. And the only solution to protect white people is to divide a country into two countries. A country that is owned by whites so that they can live in safe environment, they can be protected, and a country of black who are killing fellow Africans, who are killing white people. That's how the world will look like. That's the image that is being created. And I want fellow Africans, black South Africans, to know this. Maybe you don't know this. You are a good people, but few group that is sponsored and paid. Even themselves, maybe they don't know the mission, but this is the mission. Take this from me. This is the mission. Maybe it will happen in your lifetime or not in your lifetime, but this will happen. So for whites, because whites are not being taken to Europe, they will stay in South Africa. For them to stay in a safe way is to divide a country, is for these whites to have their own country. So the mission will be complete. The mission will be complete. As that time, these black will not have support from the rest of the continent. Why? Because they have already destroyed the image in African countries. They have chased Nigerians, they have chased the Zimbabweans, they have chased the Mozambicans, the Ugandans, the Ghanaians, and others. So they will not get support from even African Union. I'm saying this because recently, Ghana and Nigeria have united to take the motion of xenophobia against South Africa to the African Union. So black South Africans will have no support from fellow Africans. So it will be easy for Western powers, America, Europe, to support their friends, whites in South Africa. And the country will be created the way Israel were created. It was created. The way Israel was created. That's how white South Africans will acquire the country. Of course, they have already proposed Cape exit. You remember that? They want the Western Cape to become an independent country. So to achieve the Western Cape to become an independent country, they need to create environment where the world will appreciate and say, these people, it's true, they need to be independent. Because they're being killed, they're being attacked. They need to be safe. That is agenda number 3. And agenda number 1, I'll come to agenda number 2 after agenda number 1. Agenda number 1 is the foundation of the success of agenda number 3 of creating white country in South Africa. Agenda number 1 is to change the minds of majority South Africans instead of demanding the land. So we want to own our country. So in order for us to own our country, we need to continue to hold the land. So instead of black South Africans focusing on how they can share the land with white people, they need to focus somewhere else. They are losing focus. Instead of looking on the land, we want to create our own country, the country that has resources. If you talk about the land, you talk about minerals, you talk about agriculture, you talk about investment, infrastructures, water, and everything. So for we to have our own country that is rich, we don't want to share the land. But these people want to share the land. So agenda number one is to change the minds and to change the focus of black majority in South Africa to look on the land. Instead, they have to look on other Africans. Because if we allow them to demand the land, it means we will divide the land, we will share the land. Our agenda number three, to create our own country, we find that it will be difficult to create our own country because these people have already, of course, living in the land. Of course, they have invested, they have families. So we don't need to allow these people to build in their infrastructure, to build their families or their homes in our land, where we will take back, and we will take this land and create our own country. So the agenda is to make sure that they are losing focus. Instead of focusing on taking back the land, they are focusing on fellow Africans. So they are leaving the land. The land continues to be in the hands of white minority. 80%, if not 80 or 85% of the land is in the hands of white minority, whom they want to create their own country. And 15% of the land is in the hands of majority, who are black people. You see? So right now, they have succeeded. Agenda number one has succeeded because Africans in South Africa are focusing on fellow Africans. They are focusing on Nigerians, Zimbabweans. They're busy moving the streets, finding and searching and chasing fellow Africans. Instead of focusing how we can invest, they are busy looking on the street, finding who are Nigerian, who are Ghanaian, who are Zimbabweans. So they're using a lot of time, spending a lot of time searching fellow Africans, hunting fellow Africans, instead of focusing on the land. So agenda number one has succeeded. I've succeeded. And agenda number one of losing focusing, it creates barrier among black South Africans or Africans in South Africa and Africans in the rest of the continent. So they're just building war. So agenda number one is also building the war. And if you build the war, we go to agenda number two. And agenda number two is to make sure that Africa Continental Free Trade Areas, Agenda 2063, will not come into reality. If you build the wall, it means there's no free movement of people and goods. No one will travel to a country where you don't have a guarantee of its security or her security. So agenda number two is to make sure that black South Africans will not coordinate with the rest of the continent. They have already created war and barrier so that they cannot, if they ask support, they will not get support because they have destroyed the image. So the rest of the continent, they see black South Africans as people who are bad, people who are not good, people who don't want working together, people who don't want unity. So when it comes, they need support, they will not get support. But whites are getting support from America, from Europe, and somewhere else. But black South Africans will not get support because they have destroyed fellow Africans in Nigeria, in Ghana, in somewhere else. They will not get support. You see? So Continental Free Trade Area will be cut. No Continental Free Trade Area, no free movement of people and goods, so that you cannot go to South Africa. The relationship between Africans in South Africa and Africans in the continent will be distracted. The aim is to distract. So no business, no anything. So Agenda 2063 will not come true. And behind destruction of continental free trade area is to make sure that Africans remain dependent. We cannot produce, we cannot process our resources. We'll continue to become the market of the rest of the Western world and Eastern world. Africa is the big market. So for Africa to have continental free trade area, it means you're talking about transfer of technology, movement of technology, of experts. So they don't want that thing to happen. So Africa will remain dependent. If you are dependent, you will become weak. And if you become weak, you will be controlled. And if you become divided, you create poverty. Poverty, you create insecurity. Insecurity, that's what you see in the continent of Africa. And after being cut, the relationship between Africa in the continent and Africa and South Africa, and that's where we go to agenda number 3, the agenda of whites to create their own country. I think you understand. Maybe I didn't explain it very well, but that is the mission. The mission is to make sure that white South Africans are going to create their own country. That's the agenda of xenophobia. And to create their own country, the country that will own all minerals and resources in South Africa. And that's why whites are not going to Europe. They're staying. But black people, Africans, are returning back home. So, dear lovely family, brothers and sisters, those are just my thoughts. Those are just my opinions. I'm just thinking. Maybe I'm trying to move out of the box, to think without the box, to see the future, to why these things is happening. And of course, to warn our fellow Africans in South Africa on this matter. You see, right now, Ghana and Nigeria is fighting compliant to the African Union against South Africa. So this is how the things is moving on. But it's not true, maybe. Those are just speculations, but those are just my thoughts, and that's how I think, and that's how I feel, and that's how I see. It doesn't mean it is a reality. If you have something different, you may share with me in the comment section. Also, you may share this video to other Africans to understand what is their thoughts, what they think about this. So, family, brothers and sisters, let me say, have a nice time. See you next time in other videos. We are Africans. We must love one another. We must support each other. Unity is our only salvation. Without unity, we are going nowhere. Let us preach unity, love, and hope. Thank you.